Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026, and today we're going to tackle a pervasive myth about water droplets in sunlight. We'll take on a living mulch question and discuss the Haas garden cedar. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the bonafide nerds over there at Tilth Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter Podcast, Season 4, Episode 3, or head to tilthsoil.com to learn more. I hope everyone is doing well this fine Tuesday. Things are fine here, cruising along. I had one of those days where I did a lot of waste, or muda, as it's called in lean manufacturing. Just a bunch of stuff that didn't really add any value. I did some cultivation and shot a little video for a field segment for next week that I hope is good enough to show you. It's maybe a 5 or so minute segment. And because of various malfunctions and user errors, by user I mean me, it took me like an hour to shoot it, which is generally the life of a content creator. Some days things go smoothly, and then some days you realize that your mic wasn't connected properly, and you lose the entire shot and have to redo it like multiple times, which is a fun goof to play on yourself if you're ever in a hurry. That should be for next Tuesday, I think. Also, I'm having to supplement a little mulch in the watermelon patch because the cover crop just ain't doing the trick right now, and so I'm having to get creative on the mulches using old wood chips that are pretty well broken down and some dregs of a leaf pile. I mean, rich stuff, but a little time consuming to apply it. Otherwise, though, I feel pretty good about things. We've got the moisture we need, the sunlight, certainly. I've still got about a row and a half of potatoes that are, I don't know, a little bit still on the potato beetle-y side, but they are largely gone from the original row where I spotted them, so that's good. But mostly, we are well on our way this June. How are things looking for you all? Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always a joy to see those videos, and loved seeing our contribution yesterday from our fellow Kentuckian, narrated, in fact, by Mike. That was fun. Okay, so you will remember a few weeks back that a question came in about why people say to not water during the day. And the reasons I gave were largely because, well, it can be a waste of water to irrigate, especially with sprinklers in the heat of the day. It just evaporates. And also the plants, if they are not cool enough, will not photosynthesize super well. Thus, there's no real point to giving them water they can't use, and that will ultimately go to waste. However, I saw a couple comments that day that I didn't have time to address in the Feedback Friday, where some folks had suggested or asked about not watering during the day because water could potentially burn the leaves. Now, this is one of those old wives' tales that on the surface makes sense, like trimming onions for bigger onion bulbs, which we've established is a myth. So this thing with the water droplets on the leaves is something that actually could be true, but only in very, very hyper-specific contexts. However, a bit like, I don't know, trickle-down economics, when you actually sit and think about it, you realize that how little sense it actually makes. This idea with the water droplets is one that doesn't only not make sense, it definitely doesn't make science. First, the argument, as I understand it, is that the water droplets act like little magnifying glasses on the leaves, concentrating the sunlight and thus burning up the leaves. And that's not really how magnifying glasses work. If you set a magnifying glass or a pair of glasses or whatever on the ground, sure, it can make it warm under there, but unless you lift it up and concentrate the focal point, it's not really going to do a whole lot of anything. However, pretending that this idea was accurate, if water droplets on plant leaves burned them, there would be basically no plants anywhere that thunderstorms occurred, like 0 plants. Every thunderstorm would be a national emergency. Dewdrop would no longer be a term of endearment, but a super sick villain name, which it may be either way. Dewdrop? That's pretty good. Many, many times every summer we get downpours that are followed by pure, unrelenting sunlight, and the plants are fine, while the farmers, of course, are sweating and cursing. We get heavy dews and fogs every morning and nothing. I've been misting lettuces and other plants in the heat of the summer for over a decade. Nada. No issues of burning. Fungal issues, however, that's maybe the more prominent issue there. So there is the anecdotal sense argument. It doesn't actually happen despite the many opportunities that exist for it to happen. What can happen, though, that can be mistaken for burning is that when the water droplets evaporate, they can create or leave behind a sort of little sediment, like a calcium deposit or whatever, and it looks sort of like a burn, but it results in a harmless or potentially nutritious little dot on the leaf. So it's not really burning, but I could imagine how that gets mistaken for a burn. Then secondly, in terms of order, not importance, is the science. There just isn't a ton of research on the subject, but what research we do have says that basically only in incredibly specific situations where you have fine root hairs that are tall enough to hold like a water droplet up above the leaf, and you couple that with the sun coming in at just the right angle, that's the only time when you would experience any sort of scorch. The plants that would have hairs capable of doing that, however, are not really plants that we grow for food. So yeah, by and large, this is not a concern. Not only will it rain and then immediately get sunny in many places, we have seen many times where a wayward rain cloud can drop rain, even though it is absolutely perfectly sunny outside. Moreover, wouldn't everyone at a water park be pockmarked with sun scorch if water droplets on the surface of the skin or on the surface of anything were enough to burn it? Wouldn't sheds burn down, cars be eviscerated? Oh, the poor livestock. Now, that isn't to say that water droplets can't concentrate sunlight when at the right height and for the right duration. We have a spot on our ridge vent, for instance, in the tunnel where water will collect on admittedly too loose of plastic, making a little magnifying glass right above your head. And I've seen where it has melted drip tape before, which was amazing to me, but not really surprising. Like a magnifying glass, the plastic and water combo intensifies the light into a single burning hot focal point. And boom, or more like that's probably what it sounds like. Melted drip tape. But it does have to be like 10 or 12 feet above the surface with just the right amount of water, not just droplets on the drip tape itself. That would have no effect whatsoever. Or again, there would be no drip tape because it literally uses droplets of water to irrigate. So anyway, had you all ever heard that before, believed it, questioned it? I don't really set out to bust myths on the show, as you know, but this is definitely one that jumped out to me. Let us know your thoughts, and otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, crimson and clover over and over. In the potatoes, though, we'll see. BRB.
Hello, no-till growers, fellow gardeners. This is my somewhat neglected garden. There was supposed to be mulch. I was supposed to weed. I was supposed to water. But my body has not been cooperating, so everything is in a state of neglect. And an entire crop in the tunnel that I didn't harvest. And I had to plant the tomatoes and the cucumbers just next to everything else to get something done. But yeah, even then, I'll get a lot of food. And here's my blueberry bush. It's just very, very depressed. Bunch of grass cutting in. Oh well, thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, a quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Patrick Daubert, who writes, quote, "Morning, we are experimenting with growing potatoes with crimson clover after being inspired by the discussion with Modern Ag. Currently, the potatoes are now taller than the clover. Wondering if leaving the clover to go to flower and seed versus cutting it back and releasing some of that root nitrogen and giving the potato foliage more air circulation. We are also doing this clover strategy in our asparagus beds. Previously used New Zealand spinach. It's not very tasty spinach to me, but it's great for chickens. Happy your voice is back and you're feeling better," end quote. Thank you. And so this is a super fun question. And I believe Patrick is referring to the conversation with Lincoln Fishman from Momentum Ag about the living pathways and planting into living mulches, which if you haven't listened to or watched that, we will link it in the show notes. It's well worth it. On that note, I will be doing more interviews later in the year. The summer, as I've said before, is just really hard for both me and the farmers with whom I like to speak. But this fall, we should be back to it. Anyway, okay, so crimson clover and potatoes. Now, to be clear, I've never tried this particular combination together, so I can only speculate as to what will happen and or the challenges you might run into. So the first part of this question is whether or not to cut the crimson clover back. and get a little nitrogen from it, or let it flower and go to seed. And for me, I'm going to cut it back. The value of the flowers would obviously be beneficials, but the flowers will be tall, restricting some sunlight and airflow to the potatoes, which could lead to slow growth and or disease issues. Going to seed also means that the plant is using a lot of the nutrients you grew it for to steal from it to make its babies, its seeds. So ideally, you knock it back before it does that part, so that some of those roots will die and release some of those nutrients to your plants. That's the first part. If you can cut it back without cutting the potatoes, that would probably be ideal. The second part is that you don't really want it going to seed if you can help it. I guess I wouldn't want that, only because I want to control which seeds go down and where and at what time. It may be perfectly fine, and then you just end up with, like a nice little winter cover crop there. But it's worth, in my opinion, controlling what gets seeded where in the garden, especially because I may want another crop after the potatoes, especially if some customer comes calling and they're like, hey, can you do an extra round of scallions for me? And I'd be like, I have just the plot for you. Now, it may not matter for you, or crimson clover may be in the crop plans, who knows? But you may just want to be able to control what seeds go where. Harvest could be tricky for you here, just as the roots will be interlocked, and I worry about the potatoes, bred for low competition in general, and that they may be small, but that's hard to say. They may be fine. Water too, that's another concern. You will need to be making sure both the cover crop and the potato crop both have adequate moisture. The New Zealand spinach thing is interesting. I could see that being a decent intercrop plant, but I have not tried that myself. We call it summer spinach, and some restaurants, the more adventurous ones at least, may be into it. It's a high yielder, and it lasts for quite a while. So you could get a second crop there, but it is a little slow to grow. Anyway, I think this is all a cool idea, living mulches. I just urge people, as I believe Lincoln would agree with, to proceed slowly and do small trials to find, the crop combinations that may or may not work the best with you. Like I've said many times, the living pathways were my answer to living mulches when I found the living mulches were just a little too complicated for most crops and could drastically reduce the yields or just make planting super hard. However, there is no one right way to grow food, and every crop is a little bit different. And if in your context that crop combo works, we'd always love to hear about it. So make sure to send those along, and please let us know how this one went, Patrick. We'll be excited to hear. Otherwise, we're going to take us one last quick break, and when we come back, we will take another seeder out for a stroll. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by BCS America. If you're practicing no-till or low-till farming, you know that heavy equipment is often the enemy of your soil structure. That's where BCS two-wheeled tractors come in. Built for small farms, market gardens, and regenerative growers, BCS tractors give you the power to manage beds efficiently without unnecessary compaction. For the low and no-till grower, there are two attachments that change the game. The BCS Power Harrow stirs only the top inch or two of soil to incorporate soil amendments and create a perfect seed bed without soil inversion or pulling up weed seeds. And when it's time to terminate cover crops, that flail mower shreds organic matter into a beautiful, nutrient-rich mulch right on top of the bed. To find your local dealer and see the full lineup of attachments designed for the way you farm, head to bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. Okay, so I am trying to cover all the cedars I can this season, or at least all the cedars I've tried. There are not a ton that I haven't tried, but there are a few out there that I do hope to get my hands on one day. Anyway, I think the Haas cedar deserves a little recognition because although it's not a cedar I use a ton, it is a cedar that I think is pretty versatile in the right situations. Now, you may ask, if it's so versatile, why doesn't it get more attention from you? Well, we'll get back to that. First, some basics. The Haas cedar is indeed a Haas. It's like 15 to 20 pound range of weight. The Earthway, by contrast, is about half that at like 9 something pounds. However, the Haas, as they themselves say, is built to last. We got ours maybe 8 or so years ago, 9, but it's still in good shape. Though again, it does not get as much use as my other cedars on the farm. But let's go through some of the pros. I like the disc on the bottom of the seeder. That's good for rougher and looser soils alike, just as it's slicing through rather than getting caught on stuff. I like that it's easy to roll and turn around with without spilling seeds by pivoting on the front wheel. The back wheel drives the seed plate in the hopper. To make that make sense, the Jang is driven by the front wheel, which means that you kind of have to do a wheelie to turn it around, but that is more awkward than it sounds to do. So the Haas design is nice in that way, that you kind of just like pivot on the front wheel and then turn it around really quickly. The price is right in between the Jang and the Earthway at around $400 for the Haas. But again, it's going to outlast probably both of those tools, so it's a bit of an investment, though it could pay off in the long haul. However, like all tools, the Haas is imperfect. The place where it probably suffers the most is in the hopper. It's a little slow to switch the seed plates. It's not always super consistent how it drops them. Little seeds like carrots really struggle too, though they have designed a new hopper that you can buy that might address that. I don't know. I haven't tried it. Honestly, changing the seed plate is probably the biggest reason I don't use this seeder quite as much as the Earthway. At the same time, if it were the only seeder I had or had it instead of the Earthway, I wouldn't be all that disappointed. The ease of the Earthway makes it kind of a straightforward go-to seeder for me in a pinch or in the heat of the day when I'm just like rushing to get something done. But for bigger seeds, beans and corns, and even, like maybe some pelleted seeds, I think the Haas is potentially a superior tool to the Earthway. For that reason, cover crops are another area it could come in handy, just because of the bigger seeds or the mixture of seeds. Also, again, I like the disc on the Haas versus the shoe on the Earthway because discs tend to cut through rough material versus getting stuck in it or bunching up or creating slicks beneath the seeds in the soil because it's just like kind of grinding instead of like rolling through it. However, on the Haas, it's not a disc in the sense that Haas can deal with like really rough soil or like sod or something. It still needs a decent soil preparation, but the depth is easily adjustable, unlike the Jang, which is kind of a pain to adjust the depth. So for me, it's totally acceptable seeder for bigger bulk seeding. Maybe a little bit pricey, but it will last you. So that's good. It's a good investment. Maybe a little bit of an heirloom. Like if I bought it and I was watching reviews of other seeders, I wouldn't be down on myself for it. I would think that it was still a good purchase. You could figure out some systems for managing the slow plate change out perhaps, or you just get used to it. One thing I forgot to mention is this nifty kickstand, which I do like. Anyway, what say you all, or what questions do you all have about it? Let us know. And otherwise, we're done for this till Tuesday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is a super easy way to help us out. If you're like, I like this work, I'd like to help them out. That's an easy way to do it. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. She would love to hear from you. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout on the show. So no new signups, unfortunately, yesterday. All good. We will get back to our ladies who were, found their camp was empty. I think this is important. Could be an important story. We'll find out. Sign-ups pending. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.